Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for joining us for our monthly series. Today, we're going to focus our discussion on the stigma surrounding mental health in men. Our series today is made possible by Wegmans and Toshiba. My name is Lauren Alder. I'm the peer program coordinator at the Mental Health Association of Rochester. And according to Mental Health America, men are less likely than women to seek help for depression, substance abuse, and stressful life events due to social stigma, reluctance to talk, and downplaying stigma. Today, we want to amplify the message that you are not alone. Our viewers have an opportunity to ask our panelists questions along the way. Please feel free to comment with your questions or send us a private message. We'd like to kick off by first welcoming our panelists. We thank each of them for participating today and joining us in this important discussion. I'll take an opportunity to introduce each of them to our listeners here. We have Dr. Jeffrey Dulko, PhD and CRC. He's a licensed psychologist at Trillium Health.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Dr. Dulko is a manager of the behavioral health at Trillium Health and a licensed psychologist in private practice. He is also a certified rehabilitation counselor and has been providing counseling and psychotherapy services for over 31 years. Dr. Dulko has been conducting presentations and training programs on a variety of mental health topics, including men's issues, on a national level for over 15 years. So welcome. Yeah, glad you can make it.
Glad to be here.
Next, Brian Belker is with us. He's employed at Rochester Recovery Fitness, here in Rochester as an outreach and engagement specialist, peer recovery coach as well. Brian has been in long-term recovery for 8.5 years, and Brian loves anything athletic and recovery focused. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, glad you're here. And next with us is Sean Zeck, also an outreach and engagement specialist from Recovery Fitness. Over the past 17 years, Sean has worked closely with some truly amazing humans who are persevering through developmental disabilities, substance abuse disorder, significant and persistent mental illness, and food and housing insecurities. He currently is an outreach and engagement specialist at Recovery Fitness. In this position, Sean also provides one-on-one peer coaching to individuals seeking support in reaching their recovery goals, whatever they may be. So welcome, Sean.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, glad you're here. And with us also is Purvis Taylor. He is a master's in clinical psychology. He's also an advocate, life coach, and author of Surthrival Mode, your newest book. Purvis is an award-winning certified life coach, also mental health advocate, speaker, and author of this book and other books as well. This book particularly teaches men of color how to navigate through their emotions and mental health. So welcome, Purvis. Glad you could be here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
And we also might have a guest appearance from Peter Navratil, who is a counselor at Tree of Hope Counseling here in Rochester. So welcome to you all. Really glad everyone could be here today. So we're going to be talking about men's mental health, also some of the stigma that gets in the way sometimes for men in reaching out for help, or even identifying that there is a problem that needs to be looked at. With that, I also want to just acknowledge that this is a gender binary conversation, and that's not everyone's experience. So our hope is really today that throughout our resources that we'll share, the sharing of our own experiences and those that we work with, and the insights that are shared, that it will be helpful to a wider audience as well. So I just want to put that out there and recognize that. So to kind of start us off and frame this a little bit, over 6 million men suffer from depression each year. Male depression often goes undiagnosed. Men are more likely to report fatigue, irritability, loss of interest in work or hobbies, rather than feelings of sadness or worthlessness. So the first question I'd like to throw out to the panel um, is what are some of the societal pressures that you've noticed in what causes stigma around talking about mental health in men? And I wonder, Purvis, if you want to start us off.
Thank you. And that's a great question. I think there are a multitude of answers, but I think one of them is, when you think about masculinity, you think about hegemonic masculinity, and you think about the variant of toxic masculinity. I think a lot of people subscribe to it, not just men. And I think that leads to us not being able to be actualized beyond a certain thing. Like, I think that we've been pigeonholed to be a certain thing. And so, like, the conversation around being and men is something that I really like to explore. But I think it has a lot to do with that thing of how men were only actualized to be producers or providers and nothing else, and how we're not able to tap into the other aspects of who we are as beings.
Thanks for sharing that. I so relate to that. I often struggled myself in terms of thinking of acting as a fixer a lot in my life, and like that. So I can't ask for help if I need to be the fixer. Yeah, I wonder other people
and nor is there a space for that, and nor is there a space for that for you, because so many of us subscribe, whether we realize it or not. Yeah,
to those things, sure. Yeah, Brian, how about for you? Some of the societal pressures you've kind of noticed that maybe make it hard to reach out or even identify.
Yeah, piggybacking off that as well. Most men are raised to be tough, to be strong, to be self-supporting, self-efficient, make sure everything looks good on the outside. And we don't talk about what's going on the inside. At least that's how I was raised. Everything was about how you looked on the outside, how the family looked, and anything that may be considered weak or different or that was just, we didn't talk about it. We were taught to shove it down and deal with it. So that's been my experience.
Yeah, so true. And how about for you, Jeff? Some of the things that you notice in terms of some of those outside pressures?
Sure. I think what we see is that there are a few categories men are allowed to be in. And if you step outside of those categories, oftentimes you're seen as being unmasculine, or just someone it doesn't fit into what we understand as masculine, and so ostracized and kind of left alone or considered weird. And so I think that goes along with this, the stereotype that true men don't get help or don't seek help. And so there's a lot of pressure to avoid support for oneself, to explore who they really are as a man. It makes it very challenging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you definitely get put in those places where we can't reach out and feel like we have to keep it all to ourselves. Yeah, how about you, Sean? What's some of your experience in terms of the pressures, either for yourself or people that you've worked with?
Yeah, I agree with what everybody's saying here. I think society really sees it predominantly as a weakness and like a lack in an ability to, provide. And that's what men are expected to do is to provide and to keep the family afloat and to be the biggest role model. And for a man to speak out and say, hey, I'm struggling, then they're seen as weaker or less than. And I think internally, a lot of men feel like, well, then I have a loss of power, I have a loss of status in society, and what do I do with that? And I think that's really hard for men to deal with and know what to do with. So a lot of times I think men are really afraid to speak out and reach out for support, which then often leads to them under-reporting their symptoms or hiding behind various ways to escape those symptoms.
Yeah. There's so much that's underreported or unreported because we're often stuck in those, like Jeff mentioned, those categories. So I wonder, in terms of breaking down some of those myths that we just talked about, breaking down some of those categories or things where we can get pigeonholed in from how we're raised or society in general. Jeff, do you want to speak about what would be some of the myths that you would try to deconstruct, or you think first we would need to look at?
Sure. I think one myth that I would love to eliminate is the sense that there is such a thing as an ideal man. You know, that there's,
Mm.
there's, who that looks like, what they're doing, how much money they're earning. That you have to have this well-rounded power dimension dynamic to you, that you're winning in all areas of your life, and that's what we're all supposed to uphold. And it's just it puts so much pressure because no one can sustain that and or reach all of those areas. So I think I'd love to get rid of that notion. I think the other thing is that that there are problems, especially associated in mental health areas, that men are able to, certainly take on or have themselves. Areas such as eating disorders, or that you typically don't see men, say that they can get treatment because they're not supposed to have that type of disorder. So I think that to have room to have whatever mental health issues you're having, and to feel free to be able to, seek help in whatever capacity you can. But that I think those are the two areas I would address.
Great. Yeah, those are really important areas that we can get really bogged down in. How about you, Purvis? Any myths that really stick out for you?
Well, that we aren't emotional.
Mhm.
I think that's one of the big
Yeah.
ones. I think a lot of times people don't understand that we feel a lot of emotions, and a lot of times we don't have the language or the lexicon to articulate what it is that we're feeling, but we definitely have emotions. And I think that's so important because I think, to Jeff's point, like this ideal man, like, the
Mhm.
strong silent type, right? Those are the descriptors we give men. Strong silent type, a good man is strong and silent, but if you want him to be healthy, how can he be silent? Um, and so it's really around the talk around us and our emotions. Like men, we have emotions.
Yeah, it's so true. Just allowing ourselves to be human, that we're human like everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, that we're just can be just as emotional or
Yeah.
having hard times, just like
Yeah.
others. Yeah, yeah. Any myths for you, Sean, that really kind of stick out in your work or in just your own life that really think need to be looked at?
Oh, I think you hit it right on the head there when you said that we're all human. I think fundamentally when we break down, our brains and take away all those stereotypes,
Mhm.
that's the biggest thing we need to really recognize is that we're all human, no matter our gender identity. We all experience the same emotions. We all have the same needs when it comes to support that we need to survive each day and overcome the trauma that we've experienced in our lives. Seeking mental health support doesn't need to make that person weaker than anybody else. It doesn't make them any less than. In the end, it makes that human stronger and it makes them more able to be the best human they can be. So I think it's really important that we break down the stereotype that men and women and every other gender identity is so different. Because in the end, we all have the same human brains and we all have those same human emotions.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, we are all the same in so many ways, and we can get stuck in those differences. Yeah. How about for you, Brian? Any myths that
Just
jump out?
piggybacking off the myth that talking about and seeking mental health treatment makes you weak, and Sean just alluded to that. Paradoxically, it makes you strong. It makes you responsible.
Mhm.
Um, I love the quote that mental health challenges aren't our fault, but they are our responsibility as individuals to work through and deal with and get help for. Because if we don't, they are going to affect everybody around us, not just ourselves.
Mhm. Yeah. And I wonder if anybody's experienced ways that these are being broken down. Examples either in your own communities or in your work or colleagues. Yeah. Anybody?
I
Purvis, I see here.
Well, I have a program called Alchemic Solutions. Is here in Brooklyn, New York, and I work with young men of color, teaching them how to develop emotional intelligence, which is so necessary as it relates to mental health because you need to know what it is that you're experiencing. Because I believe that your healing is in your words, and therapy is an exchange of words and actions and things like that. And so I've definitely seen a shift in the way that the young men have shown up, and even their grades have improved. like their relationships have improved and they're showing up more powerfully than they did before. And that's just, walking them through the process of understanding their emotions and giving them language for it. So I've definitely seen a definitely significant change in my community around the work that I do.
That's great. That's great work. It sounds like a powerful program, and that great that you're seeing that response from the men involved. Yeah.
I mean, I would say I'm certainly seeing a difference in the LGBTQ plus community. I think that community is really starting to embrace all the different possibilities when it comes to identity, when it comes to emotional intelligence, and that men aren't so stuck in that strict stereotype and that strict need to be the strong facade that our society kind of puts on men. And it's really nice to see. You see more and more people who identify as male just presenting in any way that they feel comfortable, at least within that community.
Mm-hmm. That's great that you're noticing that.
I've seen more men enter therapy now a lot easier than before. They still need a nudge, but they're very responsive to the nudging. I don't see as much resistance.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's great news that you're seeing that. Yeah, Purvis, were you going to add something?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't want to be rude. I wanted Brian to speak. No, I was going to add on to what Dr. Jeffs just said. Like, I work with men of color in teaching them, emotional intelligence and coaching them or whatever. But to his point, a lot of men that I've worked with are now in therapy, which I'm very, very proud of. Because particularly within African-American communities, it's a huge stigma. It's an even bigger stigma. And so many Black men are seeing therapists now, and I'm so excited about it.
That's great. That's a big change. Yeah. Anything that you've noticed, Brian, in terms of shifts or just even for yourself?
We may actually get into this a little more, but in the substance use field, there is such a dynamic correlation between mental health and substance abuse and substance use, and a lot of us think that putting down the substance is going to fix everything. But, in my own personal experience, I had mental health, I had anxiety, I had depression. I had these things way before I ever picked up drugs and alcohol. So, that's just one of what we need to do if we want to recover in the SUD field. We also need to treat the person's mental health and really the whole person, not just one area. And when we don't, those are the people that often continue to have, recurrences over and over again. So.
Yeah, it's a great point that there's not these separate issues, that they combine, they overlap, they interweave, that we have these things, and we've got to address all these different pieces. So we're going to have, actually, Peter will be joining us. So Peter Navratil, welcome, Pete.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Actually, Peter will be joining us. So Peter. Okay, thanks, Trisha. We had some echo there. So great. Welcome, Peter. Welcome, Pete. Glad you could make it. So
He's on.
Pete, you're on mute. You're just.
Trying to unmute here. There we go.
There we go.
No, you just okay.
There we go. Did I finally get it? Sorry about that. A little technical difficulty. I've been enjoying the conversation, though. It's a good, timely conversation. A lot of good points are being made, and the idea of I think someone said it's hard for men to talk about it, and that seems to be the theme here. It's so healthy when we can have an open dialogue about talking about the stuff that we struggle with in ourselves, and acknowledging that we suffer, and oftentimes men suffer too much in silence. So it's just great to have a conversation about it. I guess I could say it that way.
Yeah, it's really important to talk about it. And bring it out into the open. and talk about the different obstacles that get in the way. And I wonder, I want to piggyback on that a little bit in terms of Purvis, you mentioned in the African American community that the seeking therapy, you've been really excited with the people you've worked with because that's such an additional stigma there. Can you talk a little bit about that, how that's different in terms of the emphasis of that stigma there?
Well, if you think about it, you know, historically, like when you think about mental health and psychology, it's really Eurocentric in its scope, right? And so, like, we weren't really considered when you're doing these certain approaches, and so we were taught to suppress as a community, just given historically where we are. And I think we came to a place now. We're at a place now as Black people in this country where we have options. And so we can no longer do what we did to survive. And now we're at a space where we have to address our mental health issues because we have no choice, because our depression rates are alarming. Our suicide rates in young men are alarming. I think the fastest growing suicide rate in the African American community is young boys ages 5 to 12. And so, like, it's imperative that we talk about it now. And I think it's been shameful in the past, because if you know how to suppress, you know, we're talking about it as men in general, we think strength means suppression.
Right.
And for so many of us, particularly in the Black community, we think the same thing, right? And so now it's like reframing that narrative, like being strong now is talking about what you need. And I think in general, on a human level, the concept of need is shameful because we all want to seem like we have it together. And so now it's like breaking through shame, breaking through trauma, breaking through racism, breaking through all those things to get to a space of like, I need help. And so now I think that stigma is slowly shifting. I think because we're seeing the benefits of it. We're seeing people, famous people, we're seeing public figures talk about their mental health issues. And now it's become a norm, you know what I mean, to talk about mental health, which is a great thing. And so I think historically that's been the reason why there's been shame around us as Black Americans going to seek therapy, but it is changing.
Mm-hmm. That's great that it is changing. And there's so many ways to look at mental health. And like you said, like it doesn't have to be one way, one path, one approach.
And I would just add, I think some of the work like Purvis is doing and recovery, that we're starting to see a little bit more opportunity for men to be proactive with their mental health, and not waiting until they're relapsed, not waiting until they're, lost their job and, lost their family. So that's really encouraging to know that it's happening, nipping it in the bud.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is really so important. And let's talk about that a little bit. Just some of the, the resources that folks are, aware of, whether it's ones you've tapped into yourself in your own mental health journey, or ones that you support others. Pete, I wonder if you want to share a little bit about, what has helped you or the folks that you work with in terms of some resources or approaches.
Yeah, I think the ability to connect with other people, and whether it be through recovery groups, or whether it be in psychotherapy groups, or even in individual psychotherapy. But connecting seems to be the key thing. Some of the things that I've been involved with somewhat peripherally, but some way involved in, is we created a program here in Rochester that still has some work to do, but we created a program, Stand Up Guys. And we're not really robust, but we do connect with and have conversations with men who want to get involved. A lot of the work that I've done has been around the violence against women movement, and talking about men and violence, and trying to connect with men in that way, and connecting, even doing we call them offender accountability groups. Sometimes it's my wife will say, men have to be, you have to force men to get involved because they won't voluntarily do it. And the thing that I find is that when men connect with other men, even if it's in a mandated situation, that the initial resistance kind of melts away after a little bit of time. And suddenly you feel like there's people here who care about you, that are interested in what you have to say. And it's not about shaming and blaming. I think that's one of the things that men struggle with, is shame. Mm-hmm. And being in a position where you can be with other people who are struggling. Hey, we're not perfect. Right. No, we're not. We're flawed in our own unique kinds of ways. And recognizing that other men can talk about it and you can talk about yours, and not have the world collapse around you, is really, it just opens you up. So I always think it's about connecting, and it's about finding places, whether, wherever that can be, where you can connect to other people and then get that place of trust and some of these things that we need to work on. And for lots of us, it's did work with a guy, blocking on his name at the moment, but he wrote a book, Coaching for America. Joe Ehrman was his name. And he was a professional football player. And he said the three worst words that men hear, they hear as boys by the time the age of 5, and that's be a man. And the idea of be a man means if you have feelings, don't talk about them. Be strong, be tough, some of that other stuff. But that makes it so impossible if you're feeling the other softer feelings and you're not allowed to talk about them. And then you end up in this cocoon where everybody's feeling it, but no one's talking about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So finding places where men can gather. And there's a national coalition, a building institute. There were some men's focus groups that I was involved in at St. John Fisher College. Finding there's a wonderful, I'll think of it in a second, where men can they have retreats. I'm trying to think of the name of it, but it'll come to me. But it's places where men can connect with other men in a retreat situation. But that connection with other men is the key, I think.
Yeah, connection is so important. Just feeling like we're not alone in whatever it is. And if we connect with people, we'll find people who have common experiences, maybe not exactly the same thing, but the common feelings, common situations, and feeling in community with other men. I wonder if Sean or Brian, if one of you would share a little bit about that, what you see in community building and the connections at Rockcovery.
Yeah, I actually love what Pete was saying about the connections, because that's what Rockcovery is all about. I think overall it's really important that everyone have a safe place to turn to where they are surrounded by people who want nothing more than support them and lift them up. So Rockcovery does their best to create that affirming, judgment-free space. We're not a mental health facility by any means, but we do offer a free gym to all of our members. We also offer community events such as kayaking, trail runs, hiking, camping in the Adirondacks, boot camp classes, and much more. Anyone's able to walk into our facility who has 48 hours of continued sobriety and just hang out in our lounge, work out, or meet one-on-one with a peer and have a conversation about their struggles and life goals. So Rockcovery peers can assist anyone in reaching their mental health goals, whether it is reducing their misuse of alcohol and drugs, getting connection to professional supports to reduce the symptoms that they're experiencing, or just to have a non-biased buddy to be able to go to like Rockcovery events or to work out with or just to talk to. And what I really like is what Pete was talking about, having the men's groups and having other men to talk to. Rockcovery is co-ed, and I think it's really important for men to learn how to talk around everyone, not just with other men, because sometimes men can find that more easy than when they get in front of a person of the opposite gender, a person who identifies differently. They might feel like they have to put on the facade again. So I think it's really great to be able to create that tribe, that kind of community where you're talking amongst a whole bunch of people and you're learning that it's okay and it's completely inclusive and it's non-judgmental. So I think it's really important to have that environment. I think Rockcovery Fitness does a really good job of creating that environment.
That's great. Yeah, and that's a great point about how it's important for us to, as men, to be able to be comfortable with other men, but also other people that identify in different ways, and be able to just kind of build that language like you talked about, Purvis, and build how we talk about our emotions and identifying them. Yeah. Jeff, how about Trillium Health? Do you want to share some about the services there and kind of the things that are offered?
Sure. So Trillium Health has had a history of working with populations who have felt excluded, with their roots being in HIV care. And over the course of our growth and our development as an organization, we take a look at not only just the healthcare, but the mental health care and the social care, healthcare of individuals. And so we, as Sean was saying, we try to allow everyone, with however they identify, the freedom to be able to get the health care that feels comfortable to them, that feels like they can talk about whatever it is and know that their provider is going to be sensitive and trauma informed, and just going to welcome them in whatever capacity they're presenting, and to know that there's not going to be a judgment, not that they can deal with issues that aren't just about gender as well. So I think sometimes it's really interesting how people come here to specifically talk about gender issues, relationship, identity, how they fit into the community. But sometimes they want to talk about the problems that everyone else has, and they just want to know that the agency is supporting them and will not judge them and see everything through the lens of gender, or race or whatever it may be. That so the broad perspective of taking them in as a whole person and being free to highlight whatever and whatever filters, whatever way they want to present is really encouraging. I think people seek us out. And so, since when I first arrived 7 years ago, we had 300 people, and now we have close to 10,000 people. So it's been quite a large growth that we've been undertaking.
That's amazing. That's amazing growth. I mean, it really speaks to how much it's needed in the community and
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And what a good service and opportunity it is.
Mhm.
And you're so right about the whole person, is that we each have different things that maybe identify us in certain ways, but you're, like we talked about earlier, the whole human being, and trying to really speak to that. I wonder, Purvis, if you'd share with us about your recent book that you wrote that's now a resource to the community as well.
Thank you for that. But I just wanted to add on to what everyone else was saying, if I can, just briefly, around community. And I think that's so important because we only grow in the context of community. We don't grow in isolation. And these lived experiences have been extremely successful. And we love therapy. We love therapy, but lived experiences have been proven to be just as effective, right? So community is so essential as it relates to mental health and our healing. So I just want to say that. So I want to piggyback what everyone else said. But my book, Survival Mode, I wrote it because I experienced a lot of things in my life. I dealt with molestation. I dealt with bullying. I had a father die of a heroin overdose. I've been homeless. I've dealt with a lot of things, and I've walked men through a lot of experiences. And I thought about what commonalities in our lives and what we did to get us towards a place of healing and wholeness. And that's what Survival Mode is about, is taking men from just surviving to thriving within their emotions and mental health. And so I wanted to, I know that this book isn't going to solve all the answers, but I at least wanted to contribute to the solution. And it's been very, very effective. A lot, men from all races actually have benefited from reading the book, and marriages have been restored. Co-parenting relationships have been healed. A lot of men have gone to therapy. I'm really blown away at the results from those reading the book. So I'm very grateful.
That's wonderful. Thanks for sharing about it. And we've touched on some of the things in the four. So on the screen here is the site for the book. And in the book, you talk about the 4 A's: the acknowledgement, acceptance, articulation, alchemy. Yes. And this conversation has touched on some of those things, like talking about our emotions and community. Can you just talk about those 4 A's a little bit?
Yeah. So, acknowledgement is always the beginning of a breakthrough, is acknowledging something's not working and also acknowledging what is working, right? Alcoholics Anonymous is the most successful recovery program because every meeting they say, my name is Purvis and I'm an alcoholic. So they acknowledge it, right? And then you think about acceptance. Acceptance is really the end of our suffering. And I think a lot of times we struggle with acceptance because it seems like a concession, like it seems powerless, but it's really powerful. And so I teach men to accept where you are. I had to accept that I was molested. Did I want it to happen? Did I agree with it happening to me? No, but I accepted it. And so now I'm responsible for where I go in life. And next is articulation. And again, like I said, our healing is in our words. Mm-hmm. And, I stated in the book that on average, women speak 30,000 words a day, and on average, men speak 10,000 words a day, right? So there's like a 20,000 word gap in communication. And so I want men to use more language because that helps us with our healing. It helps us with our relationships. It helps us with connectivity. It helps us with our purpose, right? So articulating, developing language around your experience is so powerful. Then alchemy, which is my favorite part, which is turning lead into gold, right? Turning all the things that you've experienced in your life into gold. So me turning all of that experience that I went through, the molestation, the bullying, the suicide ideation, the father dying of a heroin overdose, all of that stuff, and turning it into who I am today, right? And so if I was able to do it, you're able to do it as well. And it won't look like what it is for me. It'll look like what it is for you. But we can all take all of our experiences and turn it into something beautiful and learning how to master the thing that once mastered us.
Wonderful. Yeah, those are wonderful points. Yeah, Brian.
Hey, Lord, I just wanted to plug a couple other local resources in the community that I've worked with individuals that use successfully. One of them's PROS, and that's Personalized Recovery Oriented Services. And PROS helps people, build natural skills. They have daily courses you can take on PROS for anything from financial well-being to learning how to publicly speak, sharpening your tools. They have support groups. They have, therapists available. They have prescribers available. So that's a great tool. And obviously, well, maybe not obvious to everybody, but another great resource for people struggling with mental health is NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, and they have a lot of similar services to PROS that people can tap into, and they have a lot of online support groups as well, and everything from meditation groups to spirituality groups to all sorts of resources people can tap into right on the website. So those are just a couple of plugs for additional resources for people.
That's wonderful, Brian. Yeah, thank you very much.
And can I just...
Yeah, please, Jeff.
What Brian said about PROS. I used to work in a PROS program, and I really appreciate the description he gave. I would also just add that it's really well designed to take shame out of mental health care, because the focus is solely on recovery and not on trying to fix something broken. And so it's very goal-oriented, very positive-oriented, and it's really a very neat model. I think that conducive for men who may have had some backgrounds with shame, and keeping them from their treatment.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, thank you both. Those are really, it's really important that we take that shame out of it, because can be such a barrier. Yeah.
I was thinking about the program I was thinking about is a Mankind Project.
Okay.
Which has some interesting connections to, if men are interested in I like Purvis's connection to alchemy, because I think that's awesome. And the idea of psychological alchemy, people online that you could look up and watch some very interesting talks that are YouTube free. People, thinking about a guy, Michael Mead, who likes to tell stories about things. And he has a lot of podcasts about finding the genius within, or the turning lead into gold. I love that analogy, and that, experiences as men oftentimes provide pretty fertile ground. It may be a tough walk through the swamp, but it's sometimes if you find the right environment, then you can really forge those things into something very meaningful. And I think Mankind Project is one. There are many, many other resources, but going online, Michael Meade, there's actually it's a little rough to listen to, but there's a guy named James Hillman who does a talk about alchemy. And it's really interesting if you can take the time to listen to what the words that we use, like trying to resolve things or mend things, or even connection is a interesting word, or attaching, how we attach. And oftentimes men struggle with that feeling of attachment, to attach to, right?
Yeah.
And so even using those words with each other makes us softer, not harder, but the softness is what makes us vibrant. And it's not the toughness makes us all alone in the world. It makes us prickly, and no one wants to be around that, So yeah. I love those words because they guys that are soft and caring and vulnerable are, that's what we all need to work towards, and we can care about each other in more meaningful ways.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Pete. Yeah, those are wonderful. I know for me too, meditation has been one of the resources I've used in my own journey that's been really helpful. Some of the things, the ones I think about in this conversation are, there's a meditation by Lama Rod Owens about recognizing our emotions and acknowledging our emotions, because that can be so hard. It was like, what am I even feeling? And another one by David Gendelman about acceptance. And because that can be such a challenging thing, whether it's things within ourselves or around other people, or acceptance of things happening outside of us, even if we're not, can't change it or don't approve of it, but that can be hard. Yeah, Brian.
Lauren, just want to piggyback on the point you just brought up too, because a lot of mental health challenges, they manifest in different ways, right? Mm-hmm. So like when I'm feeling sad or afraid, it comes out as anger, and it comes out sideways. And I think that really makes it difficult sometimes to identify what the actual, what is the actual feeling behind that anger or fear, which is important to getting to the root of, our mental health ailments.
May I chime in?
Yes, please.
I think Brian just brought up a brilliant point. I think, you think about anger can be constructive or destructive, right? And oftentimes it's destructive. And when we think about it, anger is a secondary emotion, as you stated. Oftentimes the undergirding emotion is hurt, but then underneath the hurt is disappointment. And underneath the disappointment is an expectation that wasn't met. And so what I do is I teach men how to trace what was the expectation that you had, because that helps mitigate the fury, right? Because anger is such an easy emotion to harness. You feel powerful. Hurt isn't. Hurt feels very disempowering. And so it's really about taking a deep dive into self and asking, what does this mean for me? Like, who hurt me and why can't I express the hurt? And I do the same thing. Like, I go to hurt immediately because it's easy to access. But I think that's something for us as men to really explore. Like, why can't we go to hurt and let it stay there, as opposed of it escalating into anger?
Yeah, those are great points. And it really is dealing with those emotions and really looking at what's at the core of it is really important. And I wonder about how we can, your all's thoughts about creating space to do that, to look at those things and being able to open up space for men around us, whether it's those we work with or friends or family members, creating safe space where we can open up and have those conversations, and people feel invited or welcome to have those conversations. Sean, I wonder if you have any thoughts about that kind of ways we can open up space. create space where the vulnerability, transparency is feels comfortable.
Yeah, I think a lot of it just comes down to within ourselves breaking down the stereotypes and within ourselves being open to those conversations across the board. I mean, when we go to work, when we go to any sort of event, when we go anywhere, not just as men, but just as humans in general, being able to really just walk into those spaces judgment free and really putting our minds in that focus of not putting labels and expectations on people, but just being open listeners and able to just support people where they're at and not trying to put them into our own biases and our own experiences. And I think as a community, as a tribe, we all have to kind of do that for each other and together. I don't think there's, I don't know, I don't know if there's an easy answer to it. I kind of think everybody has to kind of go into it with the right mindset of really just breaking down the stereotypes. Because, I mean, I'm a person of trans experience. So for me, I've lived a life where my first half of my life, I was perceived very differently and treated very differently. And I've noticed that with men, like you're saying, that openness, that willingness to accept somebody where they're at doesn't seem to be there. It's not, it's very isolating. Whereas being perceived differently, there's a lot of open arms, and I noticed the labels weren't there, and I noticed the general acceptance is just different. It's not like it's not there with men, it's just different. So I think it's really just important for people just to break down those biases and break down those expectations of each other and just meet each other where they're at, no matter where it is. I don't think it has to be a specific place. I just think we have to have that right mindset. And it takes all of us.
And to add on to what you're saying, Sean, I think for a lot of men, they haven't been met where they are at. And I think the acceptance, a lot of men don't accept themselves. And so I think that's a reflection, right? So how can I accept you if I can barely accept myself? And so I think it's really more so of that deep dive, which is why I encourage men to be introspective, which is something that we don't take the time to do, is to reflect over our lives and really explore ourselves with curiosity, not with shame.
I love that curiosity. And I think of recovery as discovery. And it's a recognition that there's so much to discover out there and so much to discover in ourselves if we let down the masks, even within ourselves, because frequently we have these outside expectations. I think, Purvis, you were mentioning that, or maybe Brian was, about expectation and thinking that you're supposed to be something that you're not. And like, who are you supposed to be? And, you know, how about figuring out who you are and not, you know, what outside world thinks that you're supposed to be. And that, I think, for men is really tough because we get so many messages about how we're supposed to be and then how much of us can't live up to that. Right. And then that shame comes with this image of something that you can't be. And that's the false image of manhood that many of us fall into that trap of. And it's like, no, men are just who they're supposed to be and who they are, not some projected statue of, I don't know, a hard rock guy that has no feelings. That I'm thinking of the guy Jackson Katz. I don't know if you've heard of Jackson Katz, but he did this documentary, Tough Guys. And, you know, the idea that we all got to look like a tough guy and wear that tough guy mask. And that's not who we are under that. Right. It's got to be okay to be who we are, not who we're supposed to be, you know.
I would like to say something also about the safe space in kind of a different sort of way. Even when men reach out for help, I think there's also the feeling that still they have to be fairly alone or isolated in taking care of themselves. Like somehow they're, you know, they can't, you know, have a mentor, or, you know, if they do, it's only for a short time. I really want to emphasize the need, I think, for mentorship, for sponsorship, for having other men in their lives that they can feel open with and that allow a long-term relationship to develop. You know, that really gets at a place where men feel accepted for all areas of their life, and that they have someone to go to that is, maybe had been through it before, or if not, just somebody they can connect with that doesn't necessarily feel like, a treatment program.
Yeah.
I think
Right.
we as men also have to be responsible for seeing people who are looking for mentors, who are looking for people to connect to, and leaving the invitation open to develop that relationship with people who may be looking up to us.
Mhm.
And I also think that we have to become more transparent as men, because I believe that transparency creates an environment for sharing, especially in leadership. And I understand in certain leadership positions you can't. But I think it's important that other men see that I'm not a finished product. I'm on the same journey you're on, right? I may have a little bit more tools in my toolbox than you do, but I'm on the same journey nonetheless. And I think that everyone's looking for something tangible. And and if we can present ourselves as vulnerable and transparent about our experiences and our wounds and about where we are, I think that helps create more safe spaces. And I think that creates more men to open up and share. I know that's been my secret sauce for over 10 years is that I always put my business out there, whether it's porn addiction, whatever it is that I've experienced or gone through. But I think that's needed and necessary. I can't look like I have it all together, because I don't.
Mhm. Yeah, authenticity is so essential, and role modeling. I mean, right, in that mentorship, role modeling that there is a different way to be, and learning from one another, and having, like we talked about earlier, the community of people with common experience. Yeah. I want to just kind of circle back to something we talked about earlier about the rising rates of suicide. Because with so much of that suppression and holding things in, it's found that men are 4 times more likely to die by suicide than women, and males' suicide rates are on the rise since the year 2000. Also, gay and bisexual men are on the increase in the suicide rate, especially before 25. Also in the trans community, that's a really high rate there, because of all the stigma and discrimination. And so just wondering, wanted to sort of put out there and talk a little bit about some of those warning signs we might be able to take a look at, be on the lookout for in our, people in our community, our friends, family, people that we work with, and then kind of later go into resources. Brian, I wonder if you, in your experience, you're sort of any things that you've experienced or noticed, or in terms of those warning signs.
Absolutely. I think the biggest one is change in behavior. And one that's not talked about often, but is very, very important, is that usually when somebody has accepted that they are going to go through with that, there becomes a change in personality where all of a sudden they may be happy, free, peaceful, enjoying life. And this may be somebody who has been negative for 10 years and miserable every day you've ever interacted with them. And all of a sudden they are okay with life. That is a huge warning sign that we don't even see, because we're just happy that our friend, our individual, our person is now feeling better. Personal life experience, I've seen that, and also in this field, I've seen that.
Yeah,
That's a very good one.
Yeah, really, really good point. Yeah, because in the moment you may feel, like you said, like, oh, things are better, like that's great, but there's something deeper down. Yeah, other experiences.
I think looking for, if you're, having concern for people that are becoming more isolated, this idea of suppression and compression, that leads to depression, which is isolation, which leads to death. And it's kind of that process. And sometimes that compressed feeling, when it pops out sideways, can be anger. That's one way of like decompressing that, through anger. So people that are, excessively angry, that can be a warning sign, or more angry than usual. But the idea of isolation is to get quiet or to suppress by pretending everything is okay, or that I finally arrived and I'm not going to talk about it because I've compressed it because I've already made this decision. So it becomes this like quiet silence and explosive kind of aggressive or violent type reactions. Either way become warning signs. And I think the ability to be able to talk about feeling suicidal, and that becomes another thing, is that sometimes I have clients in my practice who are afraid to say that they may even feel suicidal, because sometimes our responses to, oh, I feel suicidal, means that we have to, that's not always a 911 call. It could be. But it's great if you can have a space where you can actually say, oh, you do? Well, let's talk about what that means to you. Right. Because the reality is we all get in those swampy spaces where you feel like you just don't want to take another step. But rather than, and so it becomes this overreact, underreact. How about just open space to be able to say, I'm worried because you seem more isolated. Or I'm worried because you seem more negative or angry, or man, you were really talking down last week. Now you feel like you're on top of the world. Those are all potential polarizing differences and polar opposites, but they all are contained in the same thing.
Yeah, I think, as our general theme that we've been talking about is, the men feel the need to internalize and suppress and hide behind a facade. And I think when men start doing that, at least what I've seen a lot of, in addition to the aggressiveness and maybe the on-edge restlessness that some men might express, that participating in risky behaviors, kind of trying to take control in other ways. So a lot of times that can be seen in just a complete change of behavior. Maybe they're doing something really risky, really daredevilish, just something really outside of their character. And I think I also see a lot of that attempting to numb. And most commonly, we see it in the misuse of alcohol, but certainly not limited to that. We see it in the misuse of drugs. We see the misuse of maybe food, maybe
promiscuity as well.
Yes, sex, absolutely. And I think that's a really big thing that it's important for us to kind of note in our loved ones. We start seeing that increase, that could be a sign for help that they just don't know how to express. But certainly one I've seen a lot, especially in our field.
Yeah, thank you all so much. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
I just want to add 2 quick points, especially for men who are typically suppressors of and that don't typically talk, are significant events in their lives. So we should be very watchful if they've lost a job, lost their family through divorce, custody issues, a recent relapse, significant events like that, poverty. On top of a very important piece to look at logistically is their accessibility to a gun. Men are very frequently completers of suicide because they have easy access to guns, and it's a very definitive means that they use. So just throw that out there.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Jeff.
And then lastly, there are also men who don't exhibit any of those symptoms, right? They just take their lives. And so I think it's important for us to be in tune with our spirit, discernment, our gut. That you always know something's not right, even though everything looks on point, but something's not right. Tune into that as well, because not every man exhibits the symptoms that we just spoke about. And so I think it's so important to be in tune and with who we're speaking to, right? Because it could be something that they say, and if you're listening correctly, that'll be the thing. That will be the warning. But I just think it's important for us to be sharp within ourselves.
Yeah, it's important. It kind of comes back to connection, like we were talking about before. Well, I just want to highlight a couple of resources in terms of that. We have the Lifeline. The Suicide Prevention Lifeline is one resource that's available 24/7. There's also the Trans Lifeline, which it provides trans peer support run by and for trans people. So that's another opportunity there, as well as 211, which has 24/7 trained counselors, immediate response, and access to assistance with different sorts of resources. So there's a lot of different resources in the community. as well as our Affinity Place Warm Line. So that's another phone connection. And there's a respite house there if folks are in a situation where they just need to be around supportive people in order to kind of regroup and get centered again. I just really want to thank everyone. This has been a really wonderful conversation. Really grateful we could all come together and do this, and just really, really feel a lot of gratitude for everybody being here and sharing so honestly from the heart.
That's great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Great
this has
to
been
be with
amazing.
everyone. Great team.
You guys are awesome.
Yes.
Thanks everybody for all your great work you're doing out there, and have a wonderful day.
All right. Bye, everyone. Have a good day.